Left at the altar by her fiancé, her family ruined, she is blindsided by a ruthless magnate who enters her life, a man who knows the pain of betrayal. What begins as an unexpected act of compassion unravels into a web of lies and cold revenge. Trapped in a media scandal and a brutal family feud, she will have to fight not only for her reputation, but for the love of a man who hurt her deeply, yet who might be her only salvation. Prepare for a twist that will test the limits of forgiveness, trust, and the most unlikely passion. Watch this story to the very end. You'll be surprised by what happens. If you love stories of love and romance, subscribe to this channel and leave your comments. We post videos like this every day. Let's continue. The chilly May wind cut across Helena Hayes' face as she gazed out the window of the small apartment she shared with her sister in Santa Monica, California. The waves crashed violently against the shore, mirroring the storm brewing in her chest. In 2 weeks, she would be walking down the aisle of the historic chapel on the hill in downtown Los Angeles, wearing the simple wedding dress she had sewn herself over months of sleepless nights. Rob had promised things would be different after the wedding, that he would get a better job, that they would break free from the cycle of late bills and deferred dreams. Helena believed him because she needed to believe. At 25, she worked as an administrative assistant at a small accounting firm downtown, supporting not only herself, but helping to pay for her mother's diabetes treatment. Every dollar stretched. Every dream measured by the cruel reality of the numbers at the end of the month. "Lena, are you sure about this wedding?" asked Megan, her younger sister, entering the living room with 2 cups of weak coffee. "Rob has been so strange lately." Helena forced a smile, pushing her brown hair from her face. "It's just wedding nerves, Meg. Every groom gets like this." But inside, a voice whispered that something was wrong. Rob avoided her eyes, cancelled dates, and when they were together, he seemed distant, as if calculating something she couldn't decipher. Across town, on the luxurious upper floors of the most expensive commercial building in Century City, Los Angeles, Gabriel Vance concluded another meeting that would define the future of thousands of jobs. At 37, he commanded an empire that had started with a small hotel inherited from his grandfather and now spanned across the Americas. Luxury hotels, casinos, real estate investments, everything bore his signature of ruthless excellence. "Mr. Vance, your mother called 3 times, asking to confirm Sunday dinner," informed Amanda, his assistant, organizing papers on the mahogany desk. Gabriel didn't lift his eyes from the contracts. "Cancel it. I have a video conference with the European investors." "Sir, with all due respect, you've cancelled the last 4 family dinners." The silence that followed was familiar to everyone in the office. Gabriel Vance didn't like to be questioned, especially about his personal life. 5 years since Isabella had left him at the altar, running off with an influential politician who could open more doors for her socialite career. 5 years since he learned that love was just a dangerous illusion for men in his position. "The Hayes family is here, sir," announced the security guard over the intercom, interrupting his dark thoughts. Gabriel frowned. He didn't know any family by that name. Must be a mistake. "No, sir. They insist they have an appointment. An elderly gentleman and a lady. They look desperate." Against his better judgment, Gabriel authorized them to come up. Minutes later, a middle-aged couple entered his office, the weight of humility on their bowed shoulders. The man, with graying hair and calloused hands, held a worn hat. The woman, visibly nervous, clutched a threadbare purse. "Mr. Vance," the man began, his voice trembling, "I'm John Hayes. This is my wife, Connie. We've come to talk about our daughter, Helena." Gabriel watched them with growing impatience. "I don't know any Helena." "She's marrying Robert Hayes tomorrow," John continued, swallowing hard. "Robert works for you in marketing. He told us you were the main backer of the wedding." The world seemed to stop for a moment. Gabriel knew Robert Hayes, a mediocre employee he kept on out of pity. He had never agreed to back any wedding, much less for someone like Robert. "There must be a misunderstanding," Gabriel said, his voice dangerously low. Connie began to cry. "Please, sir, we spent all our savings on this wedding. We sold our house, took out loans. Robert guaranteed us you would cover the reception expenses, that it would be at your hotel, that..." The realization hit Gabriel like a punch to the gut. Robert had used his name to trick a humble family, promising a luxurious wedding that would never happen. And tomorrow, an innocent young woman would discover in the worst possible way that the man she was about to marry was a liar and a coward. "Where is your daughter now?" Gabriel asked, a cold fury seizing his chest. "At the church, sir, making the final preparations with the pastor. She's so happy, so hopeful." John could barely continue. "What are we going to tell her?" Gabriel looked out the panoramic window, observing the city sprawling beneath him. Somewhere out there, a young woman named Helena was about to have her world destroyed by a man who didn't even have the courage to face the consequences of his lies. And Gabriel Vance, who had sworn never again to get involved in other people's romantic dramas, felt something stir in his chest, something he hadn't felt in 5 long years. Compassion. The next morning, Helena woke up with butterflies in her stomach and a smile she couldn't suppress. The Saturday sun streamed through the window of the small bedroom she shared with Megan, illuminating the wedding dress carefully hung in the closet. Each hand-stitched point represented hours of work and dreams of a better future. "Today's the day, Meg," she sighed, hugging her sister who was still asleep. "When I come back, I'll be Mrs. Hayes." Megan forced a smile, but a shadow of concern crossed her face. The night before, she had tried to call Robert 3 times to confirm the ceremony details, but he hadn't answered. "Lena, are you sure everything's all right? Robert hasn't been in touch since yesterday." "He must be nervous, it's normal," Helena replied, already lost in her preparations. "You'll see, everything will be perfect." Across town, Gabriel Vance hadn't slept a wink. He'd spent the entire night in his office, investigating every detail of Robert Hayes's life through his contacts. What he'd discovered left him nauseated. The young man had not only lied about the wedding at the hotel, but had also racked up astronomical debts from online gambling, using Helena's name as a guarantor without her knowledge. "Sir, I've located Robert Hayes," informed his head of security, Mark, entering the office with a grim expression. "He's at the airport. Flight overseas in 2 hours." Gabriel clenched his fists. "And the bride?" "She still knows nothing. She's getting ready for the ceremony, which is supposed to start at 3 this afternoon." The clock showed noon. In 3 hours, Helena Hayes would be at the church, waiting for a man who would already be in another country. Gabriel knew that pain, the public humiliation, the feeling of having been just a plaything in the hands of someone who swore they loved him. "Prepare the car," he ordered, surprising himself. "We're going to the church." "Sir? Someone needs to tell her the truth before it's too late." At the small, historic chapel on the hill, Helena walked down the aisles in the simple yet elegant dress that had cost months of savings. The pastor greeted her warmly. He was the same one who had baptized her and Megan years ago. A few dozen guests filled the pews, neighbors, co-workers, distant cousins. None of the luxury Robert had promised, but Helena didn't care. What mattered was love. "Where are the groom's parents?" asked the pastor, checking his watch. "And the main backer he mentioned." Helena felt a chill in her stomach. "They must be arriving, Pastor. Robert said it would be a surprise." At 2:30, Gabriel pulled his black Mercedes to a stop in front of the church. Through the open doors, he could see the delicate silhouette of a young woman with brown hair pulled back in a simple bun, chatting animatedly with an elderly pastor. She radiated a pure happiness he hadn't seen in years, an innocence that was about to be brutally destroyed. For the first time in 5 years, Gabriel Vance hesitated. Who was he to interfere in this stranger's life? But then he remembered the desperation in Helena's parents' eyes, the debts incurred in her name, the humiliation awaiting her. He took a deep breath and entered the church. Helena was adjusting the altar flowers. when a shadow fell over her. She looked up and met the most imposing man she had ever seen. Tall, with dark hair combed back, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her annual salary. There was something in his dark eyes, an intensity that made her forget to breathe for a moment. "Are you Helena Hayes?" asked Gabriel, his deep voice echoing through the sacred space. "Yes," she replied, confused. "Are you?" "Gabriel Vance. I need to speak with you. It's about Robert." The groom's name made Helena smile, despite the strangeness of the situation. "Oh, you must be the main backer. Robert spoke so highly of you. What an honor to have you here." Gabriel felt as if someone had plunged a knife into his chest. The pure trust in her eyes, the innocent joy. How could he destroy all of that with his words? "Ms. Hayes," he began, but was interrupted. "Helena! Helena!" Megan ran down the church aisle, cell phone in hand, tears in her eyes. "Lena, I managed to reach one of Robert's colleagues. He's not coming." The world seemed to stop. Helena looked from her sister to the strange man in front of her, trying to process the words. "What do you mean he's not coming? It must be a misunderstanding." Gabriel stepped forward, his voice soft but firm. "He's at the airport, Helena. He flew overseas an hour ago." The color drained from her face. The simple flower bouquet slipped from her trembling fingers, scattering white petals across the church floor. "No, it can't be true. He racked up enormous debts," Gabriel continued, hating every word he had to say. "He used your name as collateral for loans he can't repay. He lied about the wedding at my hotel, about me being the main backer. Your parents spent all their savings based on those lies." Helena staggered, leaning on the altar. The few guests who had arrived early began to whisper, realizing something was terribly wrong. The pastor approached with concern. "This can't be happening," Helena murmured, her voice broken. "He loves me. We were going to build a family." Gabriel watched the pain spread across her face like ripples on a troubled lake. He knew that expression. He had seen it in the mirror 5 years ago. Without thinking, he reached out a hand to her. "Helena, you need to know one more important thing," he said, his voice gentler now. "He left a $200,000 debt in your name. Creditors will be looking for you on Monday." She lifted her eyes to him, and Gabriel saw the exact moment reality fully hit her. It wasn't just the cancelled wedding, it was her entire life collapsing, her reputation, her finances, her future. "I can help you," he heard himself say, surprising himself with his own words. Helena gazed at him through the tears that were starting to fall. "Why, you don't even know me." Gabriel had no answer for that. He just knew he couldn't leave her to face that storm alone. "Because no one deserves to go through this," he replied simply. And at that moment, in the silent church where her wedding ceremony should have been taking place, Helena Hayes looked into Gabriel Vance's eyes and felt something she couldn't name. An inexplicable connection with that powerful man who had appeared to shatter her world, and at the same time, offer a salvation she didn't understand. Gabriel's phone rang. It was Mark, his voice urgent. "Sir, the press found out about the scandal. Reporters are on their way to the church." Gabriel looked at Helena, who was still watching him with a mixture of despair and curiosity. In a matter of minutes, she would be at the center of a public scandal that would destroy any chance of rebuilding her life with dignity. "Come with me," he said, extending his hand. "Now!" Helena hesitated for a moment that felt eternal, looking at Gabriel's outstretched hand. The sound of cars approaching outside the church made the decision for her. She grasped his hand and let him guide her through the church's side exit, away from the curious stares and cameras that were starting to position themselves. Gabriel's Mercedes glided through the streets of Los Angeles in tense silence. Helena kept her eyes fixed on the passing landscape outside the window, still wearing the wedding dress that now felt like a cruel costume. Gabriel drove with mechanical precision, but his eyes occasionally drifted to observe her delicate profile in the passenger seat. "Where are we going?" Helena asked, her voice hoarse from crying. "My home. You need a safe place to figure out your next steps." Gabriel's mansion in Bel Air soared against the mountains like a modern castle of glass and steel. Helena had never imagined houses of that size existed, with gardens that looked like parks and a view that encompassed the entire city. Everything was immaculate, cold, perfect, as if no one truly lived there. "Mrs. Carmen will prepare a room for you," Gabriel said, introducing her to the housekeeper, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, "and arrange for suitable clothes." Helena looked at her crumpled wedding dress. "I can't accept this. I have no way to pay." "It's not about payment," Gabriel interrupted, his voice rougher than he'd intended. "It's about human decency." During the silent dinner in the immense dining hall, Helena barely touched her food. Gabriel discreetly watched her toy with her fork, lost in thoughts he could easily imagine. He knew well the devastated territory her mind now inhabited. "Why are you doing this?" she suddenly asked, looking up to meet his gaze. "Men like you don't get involved in problems of people like me." Gabriel paused with his wineglass in the air. "Men like me? Rich? Powerful? Who have more important things to do than save strangers from their own disasters?" He placed the glass on the table with calculated care. "Perhaps I know exactly what it's like to be left at the altar on what should be the happiest day of your life." The words slipped out before he could stop them, opening a wound he had carefully kept closed for 5 years. Helena tilted her head, noticing the shadow that crossed his eyes. "You were left at the altar?" "Yes." Gabriel rose abruptly, walking to the panoramic window. "Isabella decided that an influential politician offered better prospects than a young businessman. I found out on the wedding day, through a note she left at the hotel where the reception was supposed to be held." Helena felt a wave of understanding wash over her. How long ago was that? 5 years. 5. Long enough to learn that love is a luxury men in my position can't afford. She stood and walked towards him, stopping a few feet away. "And that's why you live alone in this enormous house?" Gabriel gave a bitter laugh. "This house has 12 bedrooms. Isabella had personally chosen every piece of furniture, every color, every detail. She said it would be our home. After she left, I kept everything exactly as she'd arranged it, a constant reminder not to make the same mistake again." "What mistake?" Helena asked softly. "Trusting, believing, loving." The silence stretched between them, heavy with shared pains and mutual understanding. Helena observed Gabriel's tense profile against the city lights and felt something stir in her chest, an inexplicable urge to touch that face marked by disillusionment, to say that she understood exactly how he felt. "Can I confess something?" she said, surprising herself with her own courage. Gabriel turned to face her. "I knew something was wrong with Robert. For weeks he'd been distant, avoiding my eyes, cancelling our dates. But I chose to ignore it because I was scared." "Scared of what?" Helena lowered her eyes, the words coming out as a painful whisper. "Of being alone forever. At 25, all my friends are already married, have kids. I work in a tiny office, live in an apartment I share with my sister, take care of my sick mother. Robert was my only chance to have a family, to not be the single one left behind." Gabriel felt something clench in his chest as he heard the raw vulnerability in her voice. "Helena, I settled for so little," she continued, tears returning to her eyes. "He never took me out to dinner, never introduced me to his friends, always made excuses. But I accepted it because I thought it was better than nothing. How could I have been so foolish?" Before he could stop himself, Gabriel took 2 steps toward her and gently touched her chin, making her lift her head. "You weren't foolish. You were brave enough to believe in love when he didn't deserve your faith." The touch of his fingers made Helena tremble, so close. She could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the almost imperceptible scar at the corner of his mouth. the way he looked at her as if she were something precious and fragile. "Mr. Vance," she began, but he interrupted her. "Gabriel. Call me Gabriel." "Gabriel," she repeated, testing the name on her tongue. "Why do I have a feeling there's something more? Something you're not telling me?" Gabriel let his hand fall, taking a step back. For a moment, he had almost told her about the debts Robert had incurred in her name, about the true risks she would face when the creditors came calling. But it wasn't the right time yet. She had suffered enough for one day. "Tomorrow, we'll discuss the practical aspects of your situation," he said, returning to a formal tone. "Tonight, just rest." Helena nodded, but remained there for another moment, studying his face. "Gabriel, thank you. Not just for taking me from the church, but for making me feel like I'm not completely alone in the world." After she went up to the guest room, Gabriel remained in the living room for hours, gazing at the illuminated city. He couldn't get the image of Helena in her crumpled wedding dress out of his mind, the raw pain in her eyes, the way she had said his name. For the first time in 5 years, the carefully constructed walls around his heart began to show cracks, and that terrified him more than any risky business deal or powerful rival, because Gabriel Vance had learned that some wounds never fully heal. They just wait for the right person to open them again. The next morning, Helena woke up amidst silk sheets that cost more than her monthly salary. For a confused moment, she couldn't remember where she was until reality hit her like a bucket of cold water. The broken wedding, Robert fleeing, Gabriel Vance, and his unexpected kindness. She put on one of the simple dresses Mrs. Carmen had provided and went down for breakfast. Gabriel was already at the table, reading financial reports while drinking black coffee. He looked up as she entered, and Helena felt that same chill in her stomach from the night before. A mix of nervousness and something more she didn't dare to name. "Sleep well?" he asked, pushing his papers aside. "Better than I expected, considering the circumstances." Helena poured herself some coffee, her hands trembling slightly. "Gabriel, about yesterday. I need to know the complete truth. What else did Robert do?" Gabriel took a deep breath. It was time to tell her everything. "He took out loans using your name as a guarantor. $200,000 in online gambling debts. The creditors will be looking for you today or tomorrow." The juice glass slipped from Helena's hands, shattering on the marble floor. 200,000? Her voice came out as a strangled whisper. "But I never signed anything, never authorized." "He forged your signature. I have the documents here." Gabriel stood, walking around the table to approach her. "Helena, you need to understand the gravity of the situation. These aren't conventional creditors. These are dangerous people." "Dangerous people?" she repeated, panic growing in her voice. Before Gabriel could answer, Mark burst into the room, his face tense with concern. "Sir, we have a problem. 3 men just forced their way into Ms. Hayes' apartment. Neighbors called the police, but they fled before arrival." Helena leaned on the table, her legs giving out. "Megan, my sister was there." "She's fine," Mark reassured her. "She managed to hide in the bathroom and call the police. But they left a clear message. They want the money by the end of the week, or they'll find other ways to collect." Gabriel felt a cold fury seize his chest. He knew this kind of people. He had grown up on the streets before building his empire. He knew exactly what they were capable of. "Bring Megan here immediately," he ordered, "and place security at their mother's house." "No!" Helena stood up abruptly. "I can't involve you in this. I've already caused enough damage." "Helena, you haven't caused any damage." Gabriel held her arms firmly. "You're the victim here." "I'm a victim who brought danger to your home," she cried, tears finally overflowing. "These men, they can hurt you, your family, your employees, all because of my foolishness." Gabriel pulled her into his arms, embracing her before he could think about what he was doing. Helena struggled for a moment, then collapsed against his chest, her sobs shaking her small body. He felt the delicate scent of her hair, the fragility of her shoulders, the way she fit perfectly against him. "Listen to me," he murmured in her ear, his voice softer than it had ever been. No one is going to hurt you. I promise. You don't understand. Helena lifted her face to look at him, her green eyes glistening with tears. I don't have $200,000, not even if I sold everything I own, not even if I worked the rest of my life. These people they'll have to go through me first. The determination in Gabriel's voice made something stir in Helena's chest. She studied him, his jaw tense, his dark eyes burning with a protective fury that made her feel safe and terrified at the same time. Why? She asked, her voice a whisper. Why are you doing this for me? Gabriel looked at her in his arms, feeling all his carefully constructed defenses crumble like sandcastles. The truth was simple and terrifying. In less than 24 hours, this woman had managed to reach a part of his soul he thought he had buried forever. Because, he said, raising a hand to gently touch her face, 5 years ago, I swore I'd never care about anyone again. And now, I've found I can't stop caring about you. The air between them became electrified. Helena felt her heart beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. Gabriel's eyes moved to her lips, and she found herself leaning slightly toward him, as if a magnetic force pulled her. The moment was interrupted by Gabriel's phone. He answered, keeping Helena in his arms. Mr. Vance. It was his lawyer's voice, Dr. Augustus. I need to speak with you urgently about Ms. Hayes' situation. Tell me. The creditors have filed a lawsuit. They not only want the money, but they're also alleging she actively participated in the scheme. If they prove that, she could face 5 to 10 years in prison. Helena heard every word and felt the world spin around her. Prison. Not just the debts, but prison. Gabriel held her more firmly as she began to sway. There is a way out, the lawyer continued. If someone of impeccable reputation takes responsibility for her, assumes the debts, and vouches for her innocence, the case can be dismissed. But that person would be taking an enormous risk. If she disappears or gets into any trouble, the responsibility falls entirely on the guarantor. Gabriel looked at Helena, who watched him with a mixture of hope and terror. He knew what he was about to do. He also knew it would change everything between them, that there would be no going back. Prepare the documents, he said, without taking his eyes off Helena. I'll take responsibility for her. Gabriel, no, Helena murmured. You can't do this. It's too much risk. I've decided. He hung up the phone and held her face in his hands. Helena, this means you'll have to stay here, under my protection, until we sort everything out. It could take months, maybe longer. Do you understand what that means? She nodded slowly, understanding the magnitude of what he was offering. Not just her freedom, but his reputation, his fortune, his life, all at risk for a woman he had known for less than a day. Why? She asked once more, but this time the question carried a different weight. Gabriel smiled, the first true smile she had seen on his face. Because sometimes life gives us a second chance when we least expect it, and I'm not going to waste mine. At that moment, both knew they had crossed a line from which there was no return. What had begun as an act of compassion had transformed into something much more dangerous, a bond that would irrevocably unite them, regardless of the consequences. And the consequences, both knew, would be devastating. 3 weeks had passed since Helena had moved into Gabriel's mansion. What had begun as a temporary arrangement had evolved into a dangerous intimacy neither dared to name. They dined together every evening, shared silent breakfasts where their hands occasionally brushed as they reached for the same cup, and walked through the mansion gardens in conversations that lasted for hours. Helena had discovered that behind the businessman's impeccable facade was a man of sharp intelligence and dry wit who read voraciously and knew every employee by name. Gabriel, in turn, observed with fascination how she had transformed his cold house into a home. Fresh flowers in vases, soft music in the mornings, the sound of her laughter echoing through hallways that had been silent for years. On Tuesday morning, Gabriel found Helena in the library, leafing through a book of poetry. She wore one of the simple dresses he had had made for her, and the sunlight streaming through the windows created golden reflections in her loose hair. "You read poetry?" he asked, approaching. "My mother taught me to love poetry," Helena replied, looking up at him. "She used to say that in difficult times, the words of poets remind us that we're not alone in our pain." Gabriel sat beside her on the sofa, closer than formal etiquette would allow. "And what do the poets say about hope?" Helena smiled, an expression he had learned to anticipate with anxiety. "That it's born precisely when all seems lost." Their eyes met, and this time, neither looked away. Gabriel slowly raised his hand, touching a strand of her hair that had fallen across her face. Helena leaned slightly into his touch, her lips parted. "Helena," he murmured, his voice hoarse. "I know," she whispered, understanding perfectly what he couldn't say. "Me too." When their lips finally met, it was as if a dam had broken. 5 years of self-imposed solitude, weeks of escalating tension, the pure need for human connection. Everything exploded in that kiss, which started soft and became desperate. Gabriel pulled her closer, his hands tangling in her hair. Helena responded with a passion she didn't know she possessed, feeling as if she were waking from a deep sleep. When they finally separated, both were breathless. "This shouldn't have happened," Gabriel said, but he didn't pull away. "No," Helena agreed, but her hands remained on his face. But it did. They stood there, foreheads touching, breaths mingling, knowing they had crossed a line that changed everything. What was protection had turned into love, and love was the one thing neither of them could afford. The mansion doorbell interrupted the moment. Mark entered the library with a grim expression. "Mr. Vance, your mother is here, and she didn't come alone." Gabriel immediately pulled away from Helena, reality crashing down on them like cold water. "Who is with her?" "Your cousin Edward and Isabella Morales." The name of Gabriel's ex-fiancée made Helena feel as if she'd been punched in the stomach. Gabriel stood up, running his hands through his hair to smooth it. "Go to your room," he said to Helena, his voice returning to a formal tone. "Don't come down until I tell you." "Gabriel." "Please, Helena, trust me." She nodded and quickly exited the library, but couldn't resist stopping at the top of the staircase when she heard agitated voices coming from the main living area. "Gabriel, darling," Vivian Vance's imperious voice echoed through the hall. "We need to talk about this embarrassing situation." Helena crept down a few steps, hiding behind the marble balustrade to listen. "What situation, Mother?" Gabriel's voice was controlled, but Helena had already learned to recognize the tension beneath his calm. "Don't play dumb," a male voice intervened, which Helena presumed was Cousin Edward's. "The whole city is talking about you harboring a woman of questionable reputation. A woman left at the altar because she was involved with loan sharks." "Watch your words, Edward." "Gabriel," a third voice joined the conversation, feminine, melodious, polished. "Isabella, I came here out of genuine concern. You know how society is. People are starting to speculate about the nature of your relationship with this young woman." Helena felt her face burn with humiliation. This was how the world saw her situation, as an opportunist who had taken advantage of Gabriel's kindness. "What speculations?" Gabriel asked, his voice dangerously low. "That you're paying her debts in exchange for favors," Edward said with obvious malice. "That she seduced you to get protection. That you're living in sin under the same roof." "Enough!" Gabriel's voice exploded with fury. "Gabriel, my love," Isabella continued, her voice taking on a soft, intimate tone that made Helena cringe. "You know I've always cared about you. When I found out you were putting yourself at risk for this woman, I can't let you ruin your reputation for a whim." "A whim?" Gabriel repeated. "Yes, darling. Everyone knows you have too generous a heart, but charity has limits. Send this woman away before it's too late." "And what if I refuse?" There was a tense silence before Edward spoke again. "Then we'll have to take steps to protect the family name. I have contacts in the press, Gabriel. It would be very easy to leak information about the true circumstances of her presence here, about the debts, the loan sharks, the fact that you're living alone." Are you blackmailing me? I'm protecting our interests, Edward replied coldly. The company, our social standing, everything we've worked for. Do you want to throw all that away for a woman you've known for less than a month? Helena heard footsteps approaching the staircase and silently rushed back to her room, her heart pounding wildly. She leaned against the closed door, tears streaming down her face. They were right. Her presence was ruining Gabriel's life, staining his reputation, putting everything he had worked for at risk. And the worst part was that she had fallen in love with him, deeply, irrevocably in love with a man whose world she could never inhabit without causing destruction. An hour later, Gabriel gently knocked on the door. "Helena, may I come in?" She opened the door, trying to hide that she had been crying. He studied her with worried eyes. "You heard the conversation. It wasn't a question." Helena nodded, unable to speak. Gabriel sighed, running his hands through his face. "Helena, you need to know that I don't care what they think. But they're right," she interrupted him. "Your family, your ex-fiancé, all of them. I'm a risk to you, to everything you've built." "Don't say that. It's the truth, Gabriel. And we both know that what happened today in the library can't be repeated. We can't afford to fall in love." Gabriel took a step toward her, but Helena recoiled. "It's already too late for that," he said softly. 3 weeks had passed since Helena had moved into Gabriel's mansion. What had begun as a temporary arrangement had evolved into a dangerous intimacy neither dared to name. They dined together every evening, shared silent breakfasts where their hands occasionally brushed as they reached for the same cup, and walked through the mansion gardens in conversations that lasted for hours. "Then we have a problem," Helena murmured. "Because Edward is right about one thing. You'll have to choose between me and everything else. And I can't let you make that choice." That night, while Gabriel fought against sleep in his room and Helena cried silently in hers, neither of them knew that Edward Vance had already set his plan in motion. The next morning, their first photo together would grace the social column of the biggest newspaper in the city, with the headline, "Tycoon Gabriel Vance, New Love or New Scandal." The war for Gabriel Vance's soul and reputation was just beginning. The morning that would change everything began with Gabriel's phone ringing incessantly at 6 a.m. Still drowsy, he answered without checking the caller ID. "Gabriel, have you seen the papers?" His public relations director's hysterical voice fully woke him. "What papers?" "All of them, absolutely all of them. You're on the front page of 5 different newspapers, and the photo is spreading across social media like wildfire." Gabriel got out of bed, a sense of panic growing in his chest. "What photo?" "You and Helena kissing in the library. Someone photographed it through the window with a telephoto lens. The headline of the City Sentinel is, 'The Price of Love. Tycoon pays for mistress in sex scandal.'" The world seemed to stop. Gabriel rushed to his computer and opened the news websites. There he was, in high definition, passionately kissing Helena, his hands in her hair, the most intimate moment they had shared, exposed for the entire country to see. But the headlines were worse than the photo. "Businessman keeps mistress with dirty money. Gabriel Vance, the new scandal of the elite. Left at the altar, bride seduces magnate to pay gambling debts." "Mr. Vance," Mark knocked on the door, entering without waiting for an answer. "We have reporters surrounding the mansion, at least 20 press cars, and there's more." "What else?" "The IRS just announced a surprise audit of the company. They claim to have received anonymous tips about financial irregularities related to the payment of Ms. Hayes' debts." Gabriel felt as if the ground were opening beneath his feet. "Edward," he murmured. His cousin had fulfilled his threat with surgical precision. He ran down the stairs, finding Helena in the kitchen with Mrs. Carmen. She was holding a newspaper, her face ashen, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. "Helena!" She lifted her eyes to him, and Gabriel saw a pain he knew well, the pain of public betrayal, of humiliation exposed for the entire world to see. "They're saying I'm your prostitute," she said, her voice broken. "That you bought me to get revenge on Isabella. That I coldly seduced you for money." Gabriel approached, but she recoiled. "Helena, you know that's not true." "Do I?" she screamed, the pain turning to fury. "Do I know anything, Gabriel? Because according to these newspapers, you paid Robert's debts 3 days before you even met me. 3 days before. That means you already knew everything when you showed up at the church." The silence that followed was deafening. Gabriel opened and closed his mouth, searching for words that wouldn't come. "Is it true?" Helena asked, her voice a strangled whisper. "Helena, let me explain." "Is it true?" she yelled. "Yes," he admitted, the word coming out like a confession of guilt. "But it wasn't like that. I paid the debts because I couldn't let those men hurt you. It was before I met you, before I knew what you were like. So I really am your prostitute," she laughed bitterly, tears falling more intensely. "You bought me, Gabriel, literally bought me before you even knew me." "No, Helena, what I feel for you is real. What happened between us was a lie," she interrupted him. "Everything was a lie from the very first moment. You never saved me out of kindness. You bought me like an object and then decided to try out your new acquisition." Gabriel's phone rang again. It was his lawyer. "Gabriel, the situation is worse than we thought. The prosecutor's office is considering opening an inquiry for influence peddling and money laundering. And there's one more thing." "What?" "Isabella Morales gave an interview to a national news channel this morning. She's saying you developed a morbid obsession with vulnerable women after your relationship ended. That she broke up with you because she discovered this disturbing tendency to take advantage of women in desperate situations." Gabriel hung up the phone, feeling nauseated. Isabella had found the perfect way to get her revenge, destroying his reputation and making Helena suffer in the process. "That's what you didn't want to tell me yesterday," Helena said, who had overheard part of the conversation. "That besides buying me, you're also being investigated because of this." "Helena, please." "No!" she screamed, backing up until she hit the wall. "Don't touch me. Don't come near me. I was stupid enough to believe someone like you could be interested in someone like me out of love. But it was all calculated, wasn't it? You saved me because you had already invested money in me." "That's not true." "Then explain it to me, Gabriel," she challenged him. "Explain how a man who swore he'd never get emotionally involved with anyone again decides to pay a fortune for a stranger. Explain how you knew exactly where to find me, exactly what had happened, exactly how to save me." Gabriel had no answer. Because however much it hurt to admit, part of what she said made sense. He had paid the debts before meeting her. He had orchestrated the meeting at the church. He had taken her to his home, knowing she had nowhere else to go. "I fell in love with you," he said desperately. "That wasn't planned. What I feel for you is real." "How can I believe you?" Helena cried. "How can I believe anything you say after finding out our entire story was built on lies?" Mark rushed into the kitchen. "Mr. Vance, the reporters have managed to get into the garden. They're filming through the windows." Helena looked at the cameras that could already be seen through the glass, at the flashes going off, at the crowd of people outside, eager for more details of the scandal. "I can't stay here anymore," she said, addressing Mark. "Please, help me leave without being seen. I need to go." "Helena, no." Gabriel held her arm. "If you leave now, it will look like guilt. It will confirm everything they're saying about us." She turned to him, and Gabriel saw there was something dead in her eyes. The hope, the trust, the love that had begun to flourish. "Then we have a problem," Helena murmured, "because Edward is right about one thing. You'll have to choose between me and everything else. And I can't let you make that choice." That night, while Gabriel fought against sleep in his room and Helena cried silently in hers, neither of them knew that Edward Vance had already set his plan in motion. The next morning, their first photo together would grace the society column of the biggest newspaper in the city, with the headline, Tycoon Gabriel Vance, new love or new scandal? The war for Gabriel Vance's soul and reputation was just beginning. The morning that would change everything began with Gabriel's phone ringing incessantly at 6 a.m. Still drowsy, he answered without checking the caller ID. "Gabriel, have you seen the papers?" His public relations director's hysterical voice fully woke him. "What papers?" "All of them, absolutely all of them. You're on the front page of 5 different newspapers, and the photo is spreading across social media like wildfire." Gabriel got out of bed, a sense of panic growing in his chest. "What photo?" "You and Helena kissing in the library. Someone photographed it through the window with a telephoto lens. The headline of the City Sentinel is, 'The Price of Love. Tycoon pays for mistress in sex scandal.'" The world seemed to stop. Gabriel rushed to his computer and opened the news websites. There he was, in high definition, passionately kissing Helena, his hands in her hair, the most intimate moment they had shared exposed for the entire country to see. But the headlines were worse than the photo. "Businessman keeps mistress with dirty money. Gabriel Vance, the new scandal of the elite. Left at the altar, bride seduces magnate to pay gambling debts." "Mr. Vance," Mark knocked on the door, entering without waiting for an answer. "We have reporters surrounding the mansion, at least 20 press cars, and there's more." "What else?" "The IRS just announced a surprise audit of the company. They claim to have received anonymous tips about financial irregularities related to the payment of Ms. Hayes' debts." Gabriel felt as if the ground were opening beneath his feet. "Edward," he murmured. His cousin had fulfilled his threat with surgical precision. He ran down the stairs, finding Helena in the kitchen with Mrs. Carmen. She was holding a newspaper, her face ashen, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. "Helena!" She lifted her eyes to him, and Gabriel saw a pain he knew well, the pain of public betrayal, of humiliation exposed for the entire world to see. "They're saying I'm your prostitute," she said, her voice broken. "That you bought me to get revenge on Isabella, that I coldly seduced you for money." Gabriel approached, but she recoiled. "Helena, you know that's not true." "Do I?" she screamed, the pain turning to fury. "Do I know anything, Gabriel? Because according to these newspapers, you paid Robert's debts 3 days before you even met me. 3 days before. That means you already knew everything when you showed up at the church." The silence that followed was deafening. Gabriel opened and closed his mouth, searching for words that wouldn't come. "Is it true?" Helena asked, her voice a strangled whisper. "Helena, let me explain." "Is it true?" she yelled. "Yes," he admitted, the word coming out like a confession of guilt. "But it wasn't like that. I paid the debts because I couldn't let those men hurt you. It was before I met you, before I knew what you were like. So I really am your prostitute," she laughed bitterly, tears falling more intensely. "You bought me, Gabriel, literally bought me before you even knew me." "No, Helena, what I feel for you is real. What happened between us was a lie," she interrupted him. "Everything was a lie from the very first moment. You never saved me out of kindness. You bought me like an object and then decided to try out your new acquisition." Gabriel's phone rang again. It was his lawyer. "Gabriel, the situation is worse than we thought. The prosecutor's office is considering opening an inquiry for influence peddling and money laundering. And there's one more thing." "What?" "Isabella Morales gave an interview to a national news channel this morning. She's saying you developed a morbid obsession with vulnerable women after your relationship ended. That she broke up with you because she discovered this disturbing tendency to take advantage of women in desperate situations." Gabriel hung up the phone, feeling nauseated. Isabella had found the perfect way to get her revenge, destroying his reputation and making Helena suffer in the process. "That's what you didn't want to tell me yesterday," Helena said, who had overheard part of the conversation. "That besides buying me, you're also being investigated because of this." "Helena, please." No, she screamed, backing up until she hit the wall. Don't touch me. Don't come near me. I was stupid enough to believe someone like you could be interested in someone like me out of love. But it was all calculated, wasn't it? You saved me because you had already invested money in me. That's not true. Then explain it to me, Gabriel, she challenged him. Explain how a man who swore he'd never get emotionally involved with anyone again decides to pay a fortune for a stranger. Explain how you knew exactly where to find me, exactly what had happened, exactly how to save me. Gabriel had no answer. Because however much it hurt to admit, part of what she said made sense. He had paid the debts before meeting her. He had orchestrated the meeting at the church. He had taken her to his home, knowing she had nowhere else to go. I fell in love with you, he said desperately. That wasn't planned. What I feel for you is real. How can I believe you? Helena cried. How can I believe anything you say after finding out our entire story was built on lies? Mark rushed into the kitchen. Mr. Vance, the reporters have managed to get into the garden. They're filming through the windows. Helena looked at the cameras that could already be seen through the glass, at the flashes going off, at the crowd of people outside, eager for more details of the scandal. I can't stay here anymore, she said, addressing Mark. Please, help me leave without being seen. I need to go. Helena, no. Gabriel held her arm. If you leave now, it will look like guilt. It will confirm everything they're saying about us. She turned to him, and Gabriel saw there was something dead in her eyes. The hope, the trust, the love that had begun to flourish. Then we have a problem, Helena murmured, because Edward is right about one thing. You'll have to choose between me and everything else, and I can't let you make that choice. That night, while Gabriel fought against sleep in his room and Helena cried silently in hers, neither of them knew that Edward Vance had already set his plan in motion. The next morning, their first photo together would grace the society column of the biggest newspaper in the city, with the headline, Tycoon Gabriel Vance, New Love or New Scandal. The war for Gabriel Vance's soul and reputation was just beginning. Helena Hayes disappeared completely from the public radar after leaving Gabriel's mansion. For 2 weeks, not even the most seasoned journalists' networks of informants could find her trail. To the outside world, she had simply evaporated, leaving behind only speculations and conspiracy theories about her whereabouts. The truth was that Helena had found refuge in the last place anyone would look, a quiet convent retreat where her grandmother had spent her last years. Sister Benedicta, who had known the Hayes family for decades, welcomed the young woman without questions, offering her shelter in the annex for women in vulnerable situations. There, among ancient stone walls and silent gardens, Helena spent the first few days submerged in tears and self-reproach. But gradually, the raw pain began to crystallize into something more solid, the determination to uncover the truth. "My child," Sister Benedicta said one morning, finding Helena hunched over newspaper clippings spread across the small table in her room. "You can't torture yourself like this." "It's not torture, sister, it's investigation." Helena lifted her eyes, red from reading so much. "Just look at these articles. They follow the same pattern, the same anonymous sources, the same insinuations. Someone is orchestrating this." During the 2 weeks of seclusion, Helena had meticulously studied every article published about her relationship with Gabriel. Her modest accounting background had taught her to recognize patterns, and the patterns emerging from the newspapers were too clear to be a coincidence. "See here," she continued, showing the clippings to the nun. The first article came out exactly 6 hours after the photo was taken. That means someone already had the story ready, just waiting for the right moment to publish. And notice the sources. People close to the Vance family. Sources in the business community. Acquaintances of the couple. All too generic to be verified, but too specific to be invented. Sister Benedicta sat beside her, observing with growing interest. And what does that mean? It means someone from Gabriel's family or inner circle planned all of this. Someone who knew our routine, who knew about our meetings in the library, who had access to financial information. Helena paused, a piece of the puzzle clicking into place in her mind. Someone who would benefit from Gabriel's downfall. That afternoon, Helena made her first outing from the convent since her arrival. She went to a small cafe downtown where she used to meet her old college friend, Patricia, who now worked as an investigative journalist for an alternative news outlet. "My God, Lena!" Patricia almost spilled her coffee when she saw her. "You disappeared off the map. Everyone's looking for you." "I know, and that's why I need your help." Helena sat down, pulling off the sunglasses she used as a disguise. "Pat, do you still have contacts in the financial sector?" "I have a few. Why?" "I need you to investigate something for me. Edward Vance, Gabriel's cousin. I want to know about his financial situation, his ambitions within the company, anything that might explain why he would have reason to destroy Gabriel." Patricia leaned forward, her journalistic instincts stirring. "You think he's behind the scandal? I'm certain, but I need proof." Over the next 3 days, Patricia worked her network of contacts while Helena remained at the convent, analyzing every document she could obtain about the Vance family. What they discovered was devastating. "Edward is broke," Patricia reported in a new secret meeting. "Bad investments in the cryptocurrency market, gambling debts he hid from the family, and the worst part, he took out loans using company shares as collateral. If Gabriel discovers this, he won't just be fired, but he could be prosecuted for embezzlement. How long does he have before this comes to light? According to my source at the bank, a month at most, unless he can get a large sum to cover the holes." Helena felt a jolt of realization. "Or unless he takes control of the company before then." Exactly. And with Gabriel publicly destroyed, demoralized, and possibly under criminal investigation, the board of directors could decide to temporarily remove him. And who would take his place? The closest relative with business experience. Edward. The pieces finally clicked into place completely. Edward wasn't just protecting the family's reputation. He was executing an elaborate scheme to seize control of the Vance empire before his own irregularities came to light. "There's one more thing," Patricia said, hesitant. "My source got some information about Isabella Morales." "What about her?" "She didn't come back by chance. Edward contacted her 2 months ago, offering a considerable sum for her to collaborate in the smear campaign against Gabriel. According to my contact, she was broke in London and needed the money." Helena felt a mixture of triumph and nausea. Isabella, the woman who had destroyed Gabriel once, had returned to do it again, this time for money. "Pat, I need one more thing. Can you find out where Edward keeps the documents about these illegal loans?" "Lena, this is dangerous. More dangerous than letting an innocent man be destroyed by lies." On Friday night, Helena dressed in dark clothes and waited until 11 o'clock to leave the convent retreat. Patricia waited for her on a street corner near the Vance corporate building with a fake badge obtained through a contact on the cleaning staff. "Are you sure about this, Lena?" her friend asked one last time. "If they catch you, it'll be trespassing, corporate espionage. If I don't do this, Gabriel will be destroyed by a lie." Helena took the badge with steady hands. "And I can't live with that on my conscience." The building was almost empty, with only a few security guards making occasional rounds. Helena used the badge to access the 23rd floor, where Edward's private office was located. Her heart pounded so hard, she was sure it could be heard through the silent corridors. Edward's office was smaller than Gabriel's, but equally luxurious. Helena went straight for the safe she had heard Gabriel mention, a small electronic safe hidden behind a painting. Using the accounting knowledge she had learned over the years, she began to test combinations based on important dates for the Vance family. After 20 minutes of attempts, the safe finally opened. Inside, she found exactly what she was looking for: fraudulent loan contracts, documents proving the improper use of company shares, and most shocking of all, receipts for payments made to journalists and to Isabella Morales. "I thought I'd find you here." Helena turned slowly. Her heart almost stopped. Edward Vance stood in the office doorway, his eyes burning with a mixture of fury and desperation. "Edward," she began, trying to hide the documents behind her back. "Little Helena playing detective," he said, closing the door behind him. "Did you really think you could investigate me without me finding out? I have contacts all over the city, darling. I knew about your meeting with the journalist by the second day. Then you know I discovered the truth." Edward laughed bitterly. "What truth? That I used some company resources for personal investments? That I paid some people to tell the truth about you and my cousin? That's not a crime, it's family protection. You destroyed Gabriel's reputation out of greed. I saved the company," Edward shouted, losing his composure. "Gabriel was about to ruin everything for a whore like you. He paid your debts as if you were a princess, when everyone knows you're just an opportunist who seduced a vulnerable man." The rage Helena had contained for weeks finally exploded. "Gabriel is 10 times the man you are. He has integrity, compassion, genuine love, things you've never understood because you only think about money and power." "Love?" Edward laughed loudly. "Do you really believe he loves you?" "Helena, darling, men like Gabriel don't fall in love with women like you. You're temporary entertainment, nothing more." "You're mistaken," a deep voice echoed from the doorway. Gabriel entered the office, followed by 2 security guards and Detective Commander Morera, a financial crimes expert. Helena felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. "Gabriel, how did you—" "Patricia called me," he explained, his eyes never leaving Edward's face. "She thought I should know that the woman I love was risking her own freedom to save me from a betrayal I didn't even imagine existed." Edward recoiled, realizing he was cornered. "Gabriel, you don't understand. I did this to protect the family, to protect the company." "You did this to hide your own crimes," the detective said, approaching. "Mr. Edward Vance, you are under arrest for embezzlement, corporate fraud, and defamation." As Edward was handcuffed and led away, still protesting his innocence, Gabriel and Helena were left alone in the devastated office. The silence between them was heavy with weeks of pain, misunderstandings, and denied love. "Why?" Gabriel finally asked. "Why did you risk everything for me after what happened between us?" Helena held the documents against her chest, tears finally running freely down her face. "Because even hurt, even wounded, I couldn't stop loving you. And because you didn't deserve to be destroyed by lies." Gabriel took a step toward her, then another, until he was so close he could smell the familiar scent of her hair. "Helena, about what happened, about the lies. I know you paid my debts before you met me," she interrupted him, "but I also know why you did it. Because you have a heart that cares about others, even when you try to deny it. You might have orchestrated our first meeting, but you didn't orchestrate what we feel for each other. Do you forgive me?" Helena lifted her eyes to meet his, seeing there the same vulnerability she had recognized on the first day. "If you forgive me for doubting your love." Gabriel pulled her into his arms with an urgency that spoke of weeks of separation and desperation. When their lips met, it was as if the world finally clicked back into place. "I love you," he murmured against her lips. "I've loved you since the moment I saw you in the church. I love you for your strength, for your kindness, for the way you transformed my house into a home." "I love you too," she replied, the words coming out like a prayer of gratitude. "Even when I thought our love was a lie, I could never stop loving you." 3 months later, the historic chapel on the hill in downtown Los Angeles was once again decorated for a wedding. But this time, there was no nervousness or uncertainty. Helena walked down the aisle toward the altar where Gabriel waited, radiant in her simple yet elegant dress that he had insisted on paying for, not out of obligation or guilt, but out of love. The pews were packed, not just with the city's high society who had come out of curiosity about the scandal of the year, but with people who truly mattered, Megan, Helena's fully recovered mother, Sister Benedicta, and the other nuns from the convent retreat. Company employees who genuinely respected Gabriel, and Patricia, who had won an investigative journalism award for exposing Edward's scheme. "This time," Gabriel whispered when Helena reached the altar, "it's forever." "Forever," she agreed, her smile lighting up the entire church. And when the pastor declared them husband and wife, the bells rang not only to celebrate a union, but to announce to the world that sometimes, against all odds, true love not only survives storms, it grows even stronger because of them. Isabella watched the ceremony on a national news channel from her small rented apartment in London, where she had returned after her participation in the scandal had been exposed. Edward was serving time in a maximum security prison, his assets confiscated to compensate the company for damages incurred. But for Gabriel and Helena, the past was just a distant memory. Walking hand in hand through the gardens of the mansion that was now truly a home, they knew they had found something rare and precious. A love that had been tested by fire and emerged purer and stronger. "No regrets?" Gabriel asked, stopping to admire his wife in the golden light of the sunset. "None," Helena replied, rising on her tiptoes to kiss him. "Not even the pain, because it was the pain that brought us here." And there, in the mansion that once had echoed only with silence and solitude, the sound of Helena's laughter filled every corner, promising years of happiness, love, and a family they would build together. A family born not from social conventions or familial expectations, but from the conscious choice of two hearts that found their true home in each other.